Chapter 6. This may be the most fantastic entry in the Black Notebook project yet. For this reason, both Brian and Colette are here for the afternoon to write this entry properly. We would have done it earlier, but Brian needed to catch up on chores before he could come over. As planned, Brian was dropped off here at the Cole House at 5:30 Tuesday morning. Before, as anticipated, he crashed in my bed until 9 or so. He kinda went overboard on the story he told his parents. Meanwhile, I finished up the food-related preparations before waking everyone with the Flight of the Bumblebee in E major on the third-floor piano. Brian is complaining it lacks symbolic content. I just know it's fun to play, it gets people up, and it's one of Colette's favorites. It took me a long time to learn that one. I may as well play it. We had scrambled eggs and sausage for breakfast, and left to pick up Lyra in Colette's car. Lyra was waiting on the road front as expected, but, surprisingly enough, Simeon was waiting with her. He warned us to be safe and to stick to the schedule. As usual, Jack is leaving out all but the most essential details. We may not have seen Simeon in the last few months, but I know he wasn't shorter than me, didn't have tricolored spiky hair, and wasn't Asian. Talking to Lyra on the road afterwards, she confirmed it. Simeon isn't just a wizard, he's also a shapeshifter. According to Lyra, she's never seen the same man 2 days in a row. Things just keep getting weirder around him. On a less earth-shaking note, Lyra was wearing what I assume is normal clothes for her, but we've only seen her wearing school-approved apparel before, so it was rather interesting for us. I don't know much about fashion, but I'll try to describe it. She was wearing a silk azure halter dress with a neckline punching just beneath her breasts, and a flowing skirt reaching halfway down her shins. It was kept from being excessively revealing by a long strip of cloth wound around her chest and down her stomach. I know there's a word for that, but it's completely escaping me right now. She was also barefoot. All told, it looked very comfortable, rather expensive, and pretty hot. Okay, back to Jack. For the record, I was going to mention Simeon's crazy red, yellow, and black hairdo. How could I not? Anyhow, once we picked up Lyra, she told us to head north on 71 up to Galway. Sorry, but Brian reckons we shouldn't write down the route. Maybe he's right. I know none of us are trying to conquer their world or do anything sinister, but one of you future reader people might. I've got my eye on you, future mysterious person you. I will say that with Colette's driving, it took us about half an hour of driving away from civilization before Lyra told us to pull off the road. Colette had no interest in driving off-road through dense forests, so we unpacked the car and walked from there. Lyra had a backpack with clothes and toiletries. Colette carried my acoustic guitar. I hate even going a day without music of some kind. Brian carried the food, and I carried a tent. After about 20 minutes of walking towards the gate of Wenlord, I started to get the feeling that Lyra was a little lost. All times from this point on, since none of us were bright enough to pack cell phones or wear a watch, are mostly guesswork. Colette says she felt the same way, and Brian says he figured we crossed our own path 3 times in the first 40 minutes. Dude has an incredible sense of direction for a blind guy. Finally, after what we're guessing was about an hour, we accidentally came across a cabin, and Lyra asked where we were. We consulted a map, thanked the old couple that lived there profusely, and set out again. Within 15 minutes, Lyra stopped again in a small clearing. "This is it," she said. Looking around, the spit of forest didn't look any different from any of the rest of what we saw on our trek to me, and I certainly didn't see any universe-bridging portal gate. Nevertheless, Brian replied, "Why didn't you say it smelled different? We passed by this place twice already." I took a deep whiff, but didn't smell anything different, and neither could Colette or Lyra. "What smell? I just found the gate," Lyra said, motioning to a rather large tree which I hadn't even given a second glance. Upon further inspection, however, I saw what she meant. The tree, though clearly wooden, growing, and full of leaves, looked positively unnatural. It was perfectly geometric. 8 feet-ish from the ground, it branched into 4 smaller chunks, and though I didn't have a protractor on me, I'd put money on them being precisely 90 degrees separate from each other and 45 degrees off of vertical. And that's Brian talking, not me. At any rate, each of these trunks divided again in a similar pattern, as did each branch stemming from there, and each new branch thinner and shorter than the one from which it grew. It was beautiful and a bit eerie, but nothing to suggest that it was a thread between worlds. "This," Lyra said, "is the gate of Wenlord. We'll go through after lunch. I'm starving." While Brian and I started unpacking some sandwiches, Qued asked the question we were all thinking. How is that a gate? I mean, how are we supposed to get through? Lyra, for perhaps the first time since I met her, looked uncomfortable at this question. It's rather dangerous, actually. It's easy, but we need to be careful. What we need to do is climb over the branch to the right to get into my world, and over the branch on the left to get back. Which branch? Brian asked. It doesn't matter, Lyra replied. What happens if we do it backwards, or, I asked, handing each of them a sandwich and a can of juice, just go straight over the top? I don't really know, Lyra said, biting into her sandwich. I'm just telling you what Simeon told me. I saw a little bit as I was coming here. To my right, it looked like I was about to fall off a cliff, and next to that, I just saw a field of grass. But I've never seen Simeon so serious before, so I can't think anything good will happen. We ate the rest of our small meal pretty quickly, and then approached the tree. Lyra volunteered to go first. She walked around it fully, looked up at the sun, then turned back to the tree. She jumped to grab hold of the two branches nearest her, then hoisted herself up onto the tree on her right, paused for a second, then dropped out of sight.